Okay, everybody, I want you all to say a fair farewell, a goodbye with heavy hearts to, of course, beloved icon of the channel, Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino is resigning from his position as Deputy FBI Director. The former Fox News host, podcaster, law enforcement official, and martial arts expert.
This is Karate Man. Double leg, the jump kick, the side kick, the roundhouse, the tie kick, body.
Now, Dan Bongino had seemingly nothing but problems once he got into the FBI. There's a few problems for Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. The first problem is Kash Patel is the director of the FBI, but his main skill going into it seemed to be podcasting. Now, Dan Bongino, he had some law enforcement experience before going into this that he can draw upon, but nothing in a position of leadership that would be anywhere close to helping to head the largest law enforcement agency in the United States that spans across the entire country and is the last line of defense between the American people and some of the most brutal terrorist organizations in the world. So I would say that's quite a promotion for both of them. And Dan Bongino, being Deputy FBI Director, and from many reports indicating that Kash Patel wasn't even that much of a fan of the daily briefings. He thought maybe it should be every other day. You know, maybe he should be given less information, that he was getting bored in said meetings. And after Kash Patel's, let's just say Charlie Kirk kerfluffle, when it got so bad to the point when Kash Patel went down to the site of Charlie Kirk's assassination to go with local officials to take part in these meetings with local law enforcement officials to talk to the press, he was told by the administration literally to shut up. He had a gag order from the administration because they were worried about him coming out and announcing that they had caught a suspect, they caught this or they caught that, because he kept announcing stuff that was confusing the messaging about whether they had or had not caught the man who had taken out Charlie. And they were worried about even him undercutting their case against the eventual guilty party. And so they literally told him to just stop talking. And when that's the big kahuna, when that's the person at the top of the FBI and you're Dan Bongino, right? You have a hard task ahead of you. I actually kind of feel bad for Dan because I knew that a lot of the more unglamorous management of the job, a lot of the more stressful parts of the job might end up falling upon him because I did not believe Kash Patel to be a competent administrator. Now, I could be surprised. I hope I am, because Kash Patel's success in the job helps make everybody else safer. Of course, if he's concentrating on the job. But Dan Bongino and him don't have the experience, and I didn't think they were going to do a good job. And so far, I have been not assuaged of my concerns. But that's one problem, the lack of experience and probably a stressful workload on Dan Bongino. And he has talked about this on multiple occasions. He's gone on cable news and said, I miss being away from my family. I'm doing this all the time. It's extremely stressful. The other problem is that there was Dan Bongino before he became Deputy FBI Director, and then there was Dan Bongino after he became FBI Director. Before, on the podcast, he was going out there and saying, oh my gosh, the Jeffrey Epstein files need to be revealed. The reason they're not being revealed is because they're trying to protect these elite deep state diddlers and all of this horrible corruption, and we need to reveal it, and we need to reveal everything, and we need complete transparency. Then he gets in there, and then all the things that he had said about Jeffrey Epstein was maybe no longer as factual as they once were in his eyes, and he had to back off the topic, which created such a divide in the administration between him and the rest of the admin that he actually stayed a few days at home as almost like a like walk. You ever see those like walk off campus protests? Like we're gonna do a school walkout to protest John Bolton's firing, and that's never happened, right? But some version of a school walkout. It was his version of an FBI walkout where he just stayed home. I assume ate pecan ice cream, watched a few, maybe watched a new season of Smiling Friends. I have no clue what Dan Bongino likes. Maybe a Gunsmoke. Who knows? Either way, he had that confrontation, and that was not a good look for him considering his previous reputation. And this did not get better when this happened again and again and again. Another example would be, probably the most recent example, would be Dan Bongino's back and forth about the J6 pipe bomber, where he said when he was on the podcast, J6 pipe bomber, I am confident, I'm 100% confident it was either a planned inside job by the government, or that it's an operative in order to make Trump supporters look bad. That no Trump supporter would really go out there and place a pipe bomb outside of the DNC and the RNC. That this is obviously a deep state op. Now that he's deputy FBI director and he actually has to handle the case, since they actually caught the guy now, and you can't just like rely on the gaps in knowledge to try to exploit people's fears, he has to come out and say, actually, it looks like the guy is saying he thought the election was stolen, and maybe he wasn't an Antifa deep state or this or XYZ, And when he's asked about what about your previous statements, he said, and I quote, "I was paid to say that," as if to directly call into question the credibility by which gave him the moral authority in the MAGA movement, whatever moral authority you could deem from that, to get into the position that he's in. By not only being the talking head on Fox that everybody knows, Dan Bongino, the lawman or whatever, but also by going out there and being that authentic voice that they listen to. It's not authentic to me, but it's authentic to somebody. It's authentic to some people. A lot of people like that like sheriff, rough and tumble sheriff demeanor. Either way, that calls that into question. If he was just saying it for money, then did he just say everything on his show just for money? Not in the idea that you do a job because, everybody needs to eat, but the idea that, if the pay is good, your values and what is and is not true and what you will and will not inform your audience is malleable. And if it's malleable when it comes to your show, then why would it not be malleable when it comes to being in an official government position? If you're willing to take dough in order to say crazy lies, why wouldn't you be willing to say dough to say sanitized lies for the current administration? Now, some could point to that like walk out protest and say maybe that shows a signal of integrity that could be maybe at the heart of this of this tension between them that's making him leave. Somebody could say that it's the stress that's piling up on Dan Bongino. Somebody could say it's the lack of experience in the position. Somebody could say it's being deputy director, meaning you get much less attention. You have less of a title to your name, but you oftentimes get a bigger workload than even the director of the FBI, while not getting as much of the respect. I mean, it could be any of these things. Maybe somebody offered him a book deal. It could be any of these things, honestly. But at this stage, all we can do is read his message, and tell her, sailor goodbye. We'll miss him. I will be leaving my position with the FBI in January. I want to thank President Trump, AG Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank my fellow Americans for the privilege to serve you. God bless America and those who defend her. Oh, Dan. So who's going to replace Dan? It would be smart. Maybe somebody who's worked at the FBI before.